Thank you. More applause is always better. My name is Femke Buijs, so almost correct. I am a backend engineer at Molly, and today I have a personal story to tell you. But before that, I would like to know a little bit more about you. So in the past year, raise your hand if you often felt bored or tired at work. A couple, okay. What about sometimes bad and sometimes good days? Anyone? Okay, a little bit more. Anyone here that absolutely loves their job and never gets tired of it? Ooh, wow, we have a lot of work to do today. Okay, just me then, almost just me. But that's the current me. Because the past me would have raised her hand at the first question. Because I have not always been an engineer, I am actually a career dropout. Changing my career has taught me so much about what it takes and what it brings to find the right path that I would like to share it with you today. But before we dive into that, I have an analogy for you. Often when I talk about a career, I compare it with climbing a mountain. Now imagine your current career as a mountain. This should work. It doesn't. There you go. A mountain. Now, this might be a very difficult mountain. It's very steep. It has lots of rocks on the road, the horrible weather. Walking up there has cost you so much effort and energy. Would you ever consider going back down? I mean, you've come all this way. Why would you? But what if I told you there might be another mountain out there, a second mountain, which is better suited to your interest and skill set? Then, choosing to go back down and walk that second mountain may make the journey a whole lot easier and more rewarding. Would you go then? Finding the right career can feel like that as well. I actually had one of those difficult climbing experiences. My personal strenuous mountain was my previous career in finance. I had just finished my master's in international financial management, and I was working at a bank in London. Everything seemed great. I had a good job, a great salary. I was living in a nice apartment in a popular neighborhood in London. But there was one thing missing. I was not happy. It was like walking up that mountain with a heavy backpack and flip-flops on my feet. And with every day that passed, that backpack got heavier and heavier. Both my career and my study were very successful, but it took all the energy that I had inside of me. So one morning, I was sitting behind my desk, doing the exact same thing as I did every single day. And I thought to myself, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Am I going to keep listening to the voice in my head that tells me I need to persevere just a little while longer? I couldn't. I decided I needed to walk back down that mountain. So I did. I quit my job, moved out of my house, and back into my mom's in the Netherlands. And there I was, standing in the middle of many, many mountains. I often lay awake at night thinking, I have no job, no income, I don't have a house. What am I going to do? And worse, what will people think of me not working? Because opinions were voiced by people around me. Why would she stop working? Only because she's not happy? I distinctly remember somebody telling me, "We don't all like what we're doing, Femke, but you have to earn money. That's the whole point of working." I felt like I needed to have this whole plan laid out, that even before I quit my job, that I would have all the steps laid out of the next things I was going to do, but I didn't. I had no idea which mountain I needed to climb. What I did know were the drawbacks that I would need to face with starting over any new career. I would have to start over as a junior, learn everything from scratch. And not just that, financially I would have to take a hit by accepting a huge pay cut. But for me, those reasons didn't outweigh the struggle of the climb. So how did I get into engineering? Well, I had never, ever in my life learned anything about programming. Heck, I didn't even know what HTML was. And for those of you in here that know me, I know I still don't. Please don't tell my boss. But a couple of years earlier, a little seed was planted during an internship. And ever since then, whenever I met someone that told me they were a software engineer, I thought, oh, that's cool. I wish I could do that. Eventually, it took my therapist to ask me, why don't you just give that a try? So very slowly, I climbed my second mountain by signing up for a full-time programming bootcamp in Liverpool. Step by step, that path became easier, brighter, sunnier, clearer. The amount of energy I felt while I was growing in engineering was something that I had never felt before. Suddenly, the path up the mountain was a lot easier to climb. I had lost my heavy backpack and was wearing those comfortable hiking boots. And that is when I realized fast growth comes with doing something that you like. Fast growth comes with passion. A couple of weeks ago, I read a sentence in a book where someone said, "People who attack their work with passion experience flow, which is a euphoric, effortless state of mind, which is 5 times more productive than the norm." Now, take that in for a second. 5 times more productive, and all while doing something that you like. Okay, so I can hear you think, this motivational speech is great and all, But how do I find this optimum mountain? How do I find this mountain which gives me these huge piles of productivity that you're talking about? Well, it's actually very simple. You don't. Because it's not about finding the optimum mountain. It's about trying a few. Be curious about the things that you're interested in and just try them out. It also doesn't mean that the curiosity should stop once you found something that you're excited about. Am I going to be an engineer for the rest of my life? I don't know. Is there going to be a moment where the days I dislike my job outweigh the days I do like it? Probably, yeah. But there are many more things that I am interested in, and many more mountains I would like to climb. During the preparation for this talk, I was listening to a podcast, and there someone said the following: specialization is for insects. Now, that might be a little bit strongly formulated, but it does have a point. Don't try to specialize too early. Don't try to grow as fast as possible in one profession, only to later realize you don't really like what you're doing. And it's actually not even that uncommon. In Dutch, we have a word for it. It's called dertigersdilemma. I know it's a very complicated word. I believe in English it's called a quarterly life crisis. It basically means every person approaching 30 goes through this. But even when you've passed your 30s a long, long time ago, and you have kids and mortgage to worry about, and you don't have an amazing support system that I had with my mom, which make it even more difficult and scary to lose any form of stability. Diversify, be curious, and try out different paths. And sometimes, have the courage to walk back down a path. So you now heard my story. I am of course not alone in this experience. Ever since I changed my career, I have been approached by people who did or would like to do the same. And of course, I have asked them if I could share their story with you. So let's meet up. Gabriella. Gabriella has a master's in nutrition and had worked as a dietitian at several children's hospitals in Amsterdam and Texas. Although she loved her job, she loved the puzzle that came with it. She was unfortunately often faced with a negative work environment. Considering the specific nature of her skills, she kind of felt like she didn't really have any other options, causing her to put all the energy she had inside of her to put up a brave face every single day. As you can imagine, this eventually wore her out completely. And she realized it was only holding her back from growing and advancing as a dietitian. Lucky for her, there was something else bothering her every single day. We all know it, inefficient software and the clutter of having to use multiple platforms. This sparked her interest in improving software. She started to reach out to a few people in tech and read a few blogs about, people moving from healthcare into engineering. And feeling that this might be something for her, she signed up for an online coding program in the evening hours. She was completely convinced. She quit her job and is currently finishing up a full-time boot camp in New York. Gabriella didn't burn her bridges like I did when I quit my job in finance. Instead, she just tried out the different things next to her job to see if it sparked her interest, just before she made such a decisive step. Next up, Huip. Whoops, someone's water. Huip had a law degree in his pocket, and with several years of work experience, he founded a company which helped law firms market themselves into the online world. The company was super successful. He was running it for several years. But more and more, he felt like he was missing a sense of meaning to what he was doing. He was missing that feeling that he was actually doing something useful to society as a whole. This feeling intensified when COVID hit, and the topic of vital professions was discussed in almost every single country around the world. It made him realize, albeit important, society can actually live without legal and marketing professions. What it cannot live without? School teachers. He had mulled over the thought of standing in front of a classroom for a while already, and together with his love for literature, the idea formed of moving into education as a Dutch literature teacher in middle school. However, that step is not easy. You can't just march into a school and start teaching. You need a teacher's degree for that. So he did. And now, 2.5 years and a study later, he finally feels fulfilled in his day-to-day job. Not just by educating the younger generation, but because he's helping kids who are having a difficult time in life and who are struggling in school and at home. Huip didn't change his career because he disliked what he was doing. He changed because he wanted to use his time on something that he found useful and adding something to society. Now, the two stories you just heard are from people who actually made the change. They moved from one career into the other, were successful, happy ever after. Obviously, it doesn't always go that way. Like I mentioned before, a lot of considerations come into play, such as money, before making such a decision. And for some people, those reasons actually do outweigh the struggle of their client. An acquaintance of mine is going through exactly this at the moment. He would like to stay anonymous for obvious career reasons, so let's call him John. John has a degree in computer science, but it has actually never been his passion. I know, what a shock. He actually chose this career based on what was possible with his background and how he could support himself as fast as possible so that he could move out of the place he was living in. But he had never learned to love engineering, and he always felt like it didn't really match him as a person. Instead, he doesn't really know what he wants. He's thinking about photography and cinematography, but he feels like a career in either one of those is not really realistic. He's also thinking about a study in econometrics and bioinformatics. But he's hesitant to take the risk of spending years in education. He doesn't want to be a burden to his loving partner and, not unimportantly, has gotten accustomed to a certain lifestyle his engineering salary provides for. For John, it's less about what he aspires to be, but more about what is realistic while still trying to make his path happier. He is weighing his desire to do something else with the drawbacks he knows he's going to face when changing. Now, this weighing is useful, it's important, but eventually the only way to really know what you want to do is just try stuff out and see how it feels. So what can we do, all of us, to help others try out different paths? Well, since I'm an engineer, and engineering is unfortunately still not taught in most high schools, at least not in the Netherlands, a lot of kids don't get any introduction into this field. This little letter was sent to a newspaper in the Netherlands a couple of months ago. It is from a 14-year-old girl who wonders why half her weekly lessons are language lessons, English, German, Dutch, French, while having none in IT. She recognizes that society has been digitized at an incredible speed in the past, 30 years? So why, she asks, why am I not being taught Java or Python so I can learn how to automate daily tasks or solve problems with the software I built? Well, although I was slightly offended she didn't mention PHP, I did strongly resonate with her because it sounded an awful lot like my own high school years. I mean, think for a second what your IT class was like in your high school. For me, it was PowerPoint and Excel. Giving kids the opportunity to try out different paths at an early age enables them to find out where their passion lies, what that gives them energy, what they like. You know, give them a few hours a week to code or to paint, build a table, I don't know, organize small events, and who knows what they can accomplish. Okay, so practice what you preach, right? Ever since I learned how to program, ever since I started becoming an engineer, I've always had this dream. I've always had this dream to organize a coding event, a coding camp for high school kids, free of charge and especially for girls. A camp I would have liked to exist in my own high school years, so I wouldn't have to wait, 10 years to figure out where my passion lies, just because I didn't know something like programming existed. Well, last October, that finally happened. Together with a few colleagues, I organized Codeo, which was a 4-day coding camp for 11 high school kids. We taught them the basics of HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and with every day that passed, the excitement on their faces grew. Every time they created something as simple as a title or a background color, they looked at each other and said, "Look, wow, look what I created." At the start of the camp, somebody asked me, "What is the most important thing you want to get out of this camp?" The answer was easy. To have at least a few kids walk out of the classroom excited to learn more about programming. And for that few to consist of at least one girl. Having the coding camp finish with 8 girls and 3 boys, and for a couple of girls to ask me at the end of the camp how they can continue learn more about programming, I'd say Codeo has been exactly what I envision it to be. To plant that little seed that I had years ago. And maybe for some, this has been their first step on their sunny mountain. So to close this off, I would like you all to take a moment to think what your second or maybe even third mountain would be. Even if you're completely happy with what you're doing, which I can only applaud, are there any other mountains that might be of interest? And once you have that, what can be the first step you can take towards that path? If anyone wants to share their story, I would be very happy to hear them. I will be around at the conference later today and also tomorrow, so please feel free to approach me. I'm not scary, I promise. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Femke. It was so inspirational, I think, and we need to talk about Laravel's. Just hint in. Right, anyone's got any questions? Come on, you don't want me to say any more jokes. Come on, any questions?
Nobody? Any?
There you
Mark.
How do you start organising something like Codeo?
That's a very good question.
Do you find other people that want to do it with you first? Or do you start looking out and then see if you can rope other people in to help you once you've started?
Yeah, good question. So I wanted to do this for a while already, and the struggle was indeed that it was like, how am I going to do this? Like, where am I going to find the resources? I want it to be free of charge, so there's so many costs that you have to take into account. So what I did, I just sent a message to the CTO of our company, and I said, hey, by the way, I have this idea. Would Molly be interested in sponsoring this? And they were like, yeah, great idea, go do it. And I was like, oh shit, now I have to do it. But it actually was really easy because surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, a lot of people, a lot of developers want to help, and they're actually really excited to do this. So I spoke to a few colleagues, and they, even before I asked them, they said, hey, I heard you talk about this Codeo, can I join? Can I please join? And they helped me create the program. I contacted a few high schools, and actually also a lot of high schools really wanted to join, and they wanted to share messages or share the message with the students. And it's surprisingly like I said, not surprisingly maybe, to see how many people actually want to help and want to join. And so that's kind of how it happened. So then it started rolling, and I was super nervous the first time. We wanted just a few kids, just 10 or 11, because we never taught. I had never taught anything. My fellow engineers had never been into teaching, so we just wanted to see how it went. And it went absolutely amazing. So we're going to do it again this year and bigger.
I have a question. What do you think is the smallest thing we can do to get kids into engineering? Something that anyone could do.
Yeah, so I think is to share your craft maybe with more people. So what we do, we work and we enjoy working, and we all know the problem that there are not enough engineers in the world, and every company is recruiting for it. But what do we actually do to get more people into it? And not at a later age. I started in a later age. It's actually not very easy to get into the world when you're a little bit older, a little bit more experienced. But to kind of like spark the idea that there is something out there as computer science, and actually that it is interesting for everyone, not just guys but also girls, because I know that there's a big threshold, is that the right English word? Yeah. For girls to sign up in a computer science study, and I think it's important that kind of like show your craft to more people than just your inside group.
And I think talking at conferences like
this helps.
Hopefully now you all go home and talk to your friends, your daughters, your sisters, your wives, and just tell them that it's possible and it's great.
Not just that, the kids also, the guys also. It's not just for girls.
Yeah, but
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.